Hello there, Flip here, and today we have another rare unscripted Flip video where I'm going to just be I want to try a new method. Fuck. I can't do this with a script. I want to try a new thing when supports come up to where I just make a tier list of how high priority or low priority they are for your account. And since Xianyun and Yelan are coming up, I decided to do this with Xianyun first, and then I'll do Yelan later to see how well it goes, and if it does well and you guys want me to continue doing it, then sure. We'll see. And it also gives me room to make more unscripted yap sessions, which you seem to enjoy. Anyways, I have a tier list up there whenever I'm gonna be adding them to the tiers, and we're just going to be going over all the characters, I guess. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Channel members, thank you so much for the support, it means the world to me. And also, hi! Furina and Risley are currently here, so if you'd like to save yourself some cash, then you'll love today's sponsor, Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a very safe and secure service I've been using for a few months now that some of you may be familiar with, as it allows you to buy Primo Gems at a 23% discount, which is also suitable for PlayStation and Xbox players. And it doesn't need any of your passwords or personal information. I just need to type in my UID, select my region, and would you look at that, in only 3 minutes I've received my gems. I got the 3,280 Primo Gem pack at only £36.8, which saves me some money from the original price. This site has also been endorsed by other creators like NoCaps, Mordex, and now yours truly. Loot Bar essentially will act as a gateway using a VPN to cut down on the cost of gems by removing certain taxes, whilst going through the official top-up methods for the game, which allows you to enjoy the benefits that you'd get in-game like the top-up bonuses. So use my link in the description below to get 8% off any user coupon on your purchase. Thank you Loot Bar for sponsoring, and with that, let's get back to the video. So for how this tier list is going to work, we have the highest tier, which is the Xianyun is closest to a must-pull tier, where like if you have the character or want to use the character, then you really want to pull for Xianyun. And then the high priority tier is going to be for characters that benefit a lot from Xianyun, but there are good enough alternatives to where you don't have to pull Xianyun in order for the character to function. Then we have the mid priority tier where the character has a lot of good teams with Xianyun that are relative to their other good teams, but again, there's a good enough support that you don't need Xianyun for it at all. Then the low priority tier is characters that have teams with Xianyun, but those teams aren't really close to their best teams, so there's no really point for pulling Xianyun. And then the no reason to pull ult tier is just for characters that either don't work with Xianyun or literally just gain close to no benefit from Xianyun. So starting with the Traveller, who the only I guess I should say that I'm only putting in characters that on-field in this tier list, and characters that have, I guess, an on-field playstyle with damage numbers that actually make sense to put Xianyun here on popular ones. But if a character you like isn't here, chances are they just don't work with Xianyun, but I think I did include a good range of all the on-fielders. So starting with Aether, who's a stand-in for Pyro Traveller, because they're the only Traveller that's relevant enough to include. With Pyro Traveller, like, GXG Noir made a video on it, and if you wanted to use Pyro MC as a carry, they have some pretty solid numbers, especially when we are able to get all their constellations. Some of their better teams include Overvape stuff, and you can use them with Solali for like vape melt teams and whatnot. And plunge teams should also be good because Pyro character and plunge. The only issue is that if you're using the Traveller's elemental skill or burst, you can steal vapes, so it can be inconsistent. And I think using a team like Furina with Auroron or Yelan Auroron is just going to give you a much better team regardless. So because of all the caveats, if you wanted to play Pyro MC as a main DPS, I don't think Xianyun is very high priority. For Noelle, I don't really like her plunge teams as much as I like Navia or even Itto's plunge teams. There's really no reason for Noelle to use plunges at all really. Her normal attacks already have plenty good AoE, and Noelle is a healer, so she already inherently has good Furina synergy. And even theoretically, I don't think Noelle plunge teams perform that well, so if I'm being completely honest, I think it's very low priority if you plan to pull Noelle. I just don't think her plunge teams are that great. Just play her with 3 Geo teams as a driver, or even her new Xianyun Noble Hydra teams. I think they'll all give you much servitude than playing plunge. On the complete opposite end though, if you want to main Diluc, you are pulling Xianyun, it's non-negotiable. The difference between Diluc's plunge teams and non-plunge teams are massive. Not only that, but Diluc, Xianyun teams with Silali or Furina are some of the highest cheating teams in the game, and they also feel quite good to play in practice as well. Diluc just gets better AoE, a very comfortable team, and it does a fuck ton of damage. His plunge multipliers are nuts. So if you want to main Diluc, you're using Xianyun, it's not negotiable. And I guess I'll just have Bennett as a stand-in for like any melee DPS that you want to play. So like if you want to plunge with Kaveh or something, then it will be the stand-in for this, in which even for Bennett himself, between his other carry teams and plunge teams, there's a pretty noticeable gap. Unless you're playing like Chevroux stuff where a lot of off-field damage dealers are carrying you. So if your carry doesn't really have an on-field playstyle, and they are melee attacking so they can take advantage of Bennett C6 for pyro-enabled plunges to either melt or vape. If you just want to see your favorite main carry deal stupid plunge numbers, then it depends, because I mean, if there's no other way to play them as the DPS, then it'd be high priority you pull for Xianyun. But if the carry has an alternative good playstyle, then you're probably looking more closer to mid priority. Just for the sake of the tier list looking at, I guess I'll just put it in mid priority for now, I guess. With Lisa, I'm specifically talking about aggravate plunge teams, which, because you can aggravate with every plunge, a lot of people thought these aggravate plunge teams were going to be a lot better than they turned out to be. If I'm being honest, I don't really like the aggravate plunge teams at all. They feel very awkward to play and just don't feel as fluid to use as Kazuha or Xiaolunen. And in Lisa's case specifically, one of the main draws of using Lisa as an aggravate on-fielder in the first place is because she has a defense shred to make Fischl do more damage. You lose Fischl's C6 procs if you do play like this, so I don't know, aggravate plunge teams don't feel good, I'm putting her here. With the Razor, he actually has a lot of good teams. You of course have his Dendro stuff, which I don't think is that great anymore, but something you can do. You could also just play him as physical, using Xianyun as for plunge physical teams, which are fine. Or just playing him alongside Mika, because he does benefit a decent amount from Mika. And then my favorite Razor team is probably his Chevroux teams, with C6 Bennett, because he can do pyro damage with his normal attacks, and then his Electro Wolf does electro damage, and Chevroux will buff both of those, so it feels very intuitive to play and you're taking full advantage of his kit. And then of course you can just disregard his entire kit and play vape plunge teams. But overall he has a wide range of good teams to where I think putting him in low priority is fine. I do think his plunge teams, whether physical or pyro, are on the better side of his teams, but at the same time if you have a C6 Miko or C6 Chevroux, I'd more opt into playing those archetypes for Razor. So yeah, low priority. Amber is a charge attack DPS, there's no reason to use Xianyun as a whole. I don't really like Ningguang's plunge teams at all, just use Xiaolunen, or play her in a dual carry team. Keqing is the same reasoning as Lisa, to where I don't think the plunge teams, the aggravate plunge teams are that great. Just play Keqing traditionally in aggravate teams. With Klee, you would think with Klee, you would think that Xianyun would be good because Pyro DPS and Xianyun, but Klee's plunge multipliers kind of suck. On top of that, with her burst and her skill, she'll be over applying Pyro, and Xianyun plunge teams are already very sensitive with application, so you basically just have to not use Klee's skill or burst ever in order to play a plunge team that's worse than practically any other melee plunge DPS. Her plunge teams just aren't good. So in my opinion, there's also really no reason to pull her out for a plunge. Her plunge teams are bad and worse than just playing her normally as either a Furina enabler or just a mono pyro DPS. Or even some other stuff you can do with Furina like double hydro. I'd recommend them all more before recommending plunge. I don't think I need to explain this one. Xinyan is in a weird boat to where if you want to use her as a main DPS, plunge does, there's no reason to use like pyro plunge teams because she has no synergy with it. And similar to Klee, using her burst or skill would mess up plunge frequency. Well, not plunge frequency, the consistency of vaping your plunges. But at the same time, Xinyan's alternate playstyles are worse than neglecting half her kit and using her as a plunge DPS. So I think if you do want to play Xinyan main DPS, I'd really recommend using plunge. Ganyu charge attack DPS, there's no reason at all to use Xianyun. With Xiao, I don't think I need to explain much. Xianyun gives some of the strongest buffs to Xiao, also Farazan is on Xiao's banner a lot. Xianyun lowers energy requirements for Xiao, allowing triple Onoma teams to be used very consistently. Is a healer for Furina Fanfare. Xiao doesn't need his plunges to be enabled by Xianyun, but she still provides the flat damage buff, which is nice. And in terms of practical feel, playing Xiao teams with Xianyun and without Xianyun, they feel a lot better than using someone like Bennett. So if you are a Xiao main, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to pull for Xianyun or get her constellations, or get Farazan constellations. So yeah, Hu Tao is a tricky one. With Hu Tao, if you already have like a C1 Hu Tao, then I just wouldn't bother with Xianyun. But if you're still one of the soldiers using a C0 Hu Tao, the thing I like a lot about Xianyun is that she turns Hutao's jump cancels into just an opportunity to plunge. It feels like a lot more smoother of a gameplay loop than doing jump cancels. And to also explain why Xianyun is so good in AoE for Pyro characters, when you're normally using Vape or Melt teams, I guess that in this case it would only apply to Vape, but you're only playing Vape with Hutao, so it doesn't matter. So for Vape teams, in single target, Pyro only consumes half oh my god, I have to explain elemental gauge theory. To put it in layman's terms, when you're doing a reverse reaction, you are able to apply Pyro twice, usually, before the Hydro Aura disappears. But the reason why this doesn't work as well with Xianyun is because when you plunge, she applies Onimo, and that Onimo removes the rest of your Hydro Aura. So Furina has to reapply it before your next plunge, otherwise you just lose that Vape. But in AoE, the Hydro Auras will swirl into each other, which actually makes it easier to maintain a Hydro Aura in AoE. So because of that and the fact that plunges inherently have a bigger radius than any of Hutao's attacks, it makes Hutao feel really good in AoE, as you're able to Vape in like a 360 degree radius. And if you do look at sheet DPS, technically Xianyun is better than Xianyun for Hutao. And if you're already acclimated to using Hutao's dash cancels or jump cancels, then she can also feel more intuitive to play. But in terms of actual clear times, I don't notice that much of a difference. If you have a C1 Hutao, then I think you fall into no reason to pull at all. But if you're using a Caesar Hutao, then I think Xianyun is like mid to high priority depending on the supports on your account. But I'll just leave her in mid for now, because Hutao does have a lot of other good teams that don't involve using Xianyun. So yeah, Yap session concluded. With Yanfei, she's in a very similar boat to Klee, to where you have to neglect half of Yanfei's kit in order to use her as a plunge DPS. And it's just worse than playing Yanfei normally on double Hydra teams, or even VV or Scroll Vape, to where I don't think I can really recommend Yanfei and Xianyun teams. They just don't feel good at all. As someone who loves both Eula and Xianyun, I've seen a lot of people say that Eula and Xianyun teams are really good, and I just don't see it, unless they're specifically talking about plunge, like Vape plunge teams, where Eula's a Pyro DPS. You know what, let me just go do a clear with it right now to see if it's good or not. I am ready to be severely disappointed. Actually? That didn't feel that bad. That actually felt kind of good. Hold on. Hold on. Why have I never tried this before? That actually didn't feel like shit. Let's see if it can impress me twice. Oh, did I? I did, okay. I'm kind of really impressed, actually. For a Eula team that was like a minute 20 on Asamon who teleports away. This is my first time playing the team, so I'm also not playing the best. After doing a little bit of playtesting, I really like Eula's plunge teams now. Even the physical ones, they felt pretty good. Like, they actually didn't feel horrible like I was expecting. I don't know why I didn't play it earlier. This Abyss is just really cringe to try and use Eula regardless, because Eula doesn't have the damage of a modern carry to ignore the mechanics. So if there were that bad of checks for the elements, I can honestly see like her plunge teams performing relative to her other teams. Another upside of her physical plunge team was that you don't need to burst on her, so you could ignore her energy requirements. And for someone as energy intensive as Eula, having that breathing room is pretty nice. So overall, I actually really liked her plunge teams. To just rapid fire this, no reason, no reason, no reason, no reason. Now with Itto, I like his plunge teams. They feel better than Noelle's plunge teams. But at the same time, Xianyun exists, you can play double Hydra teams, or just pull for a C2 Xianyun to make his 3-Geo teams better. So I think I'd put Itto in like mid-priority. His plunge teams are fine, they're relative to his other teams, but Itto has a decent amount of team options now. With Yai, same as the other aggravate carries. With Ayato, no. Unless you want to play him as a Pyro Plunge character, but I think his other teams like Nilou stuff, or just using him as a driver are going to be better use. First, I don't know why people hate Yelan as a carry so much. But even then, she's like the other bow characters, she can't really take advantage of plunging at all. With Heizou, the 3-number core with Furina, Xianyun, and Farzan, it's the best way to play Heizou as a DPS. Because other teams kind of don't really come close to being able to use as plunge teams, and for that I think if you want to be a Heizou main, I'd recommend investing into Xianyun. Tighnari is the bow DPS, you can't really do anything with him. I guess Cyno and Dori are in the same boat to where they have, with their Dendro stuff, it's the same as the aggravate carries as well. I don't really see a point in using Xianyun with them at all. Dori has their quick bloom teams or aggravate teams, both of which just have better units to slot in. I don't even know if Cyno can plunge to begin with, first of all. And he would fall in the same boat as everyone else to where there's just too many good slots, and plunging feels very unintuitive to play. With Nahida, maybe in the future I can see her spread plunge teams being good, but as of right now we just don't really have Dendro units that can facilitate supporting spread teams besides Nahida. So I don't know, I'd rather just on-field Nahida in driving teams. Wanderer, I don't think I need to explain this much, there's no reason. Alhaitham, same thing as Nahida. Quick bloom teams are just too good. Dehya is the same case as Xinyan to where you have to disregard her playstyle to play Pyro Plunge teams. I'm saying Pyro Plunge, I mean Vape Plunge teams. You have to disregard her kit to play Vape Plunge teams, which if you do, it's better than playing her normally, unless you get Constellations on your Dehya. But I guess when you do get Constellations on Dehya, it's better to actually use her kit, to where I think it's fine leaving her in mid-priority. Lyney, same as the other bow DPS. Lynette is the exact same as Heizou to where her plunge teams, if you want to use her as a carry, are her best teams by a decent margin. And I like them a lot. It's actually one of my favorite teams to use. And I know I'm going to love it when I eventually get the C6 Farzan. So yeah. Let's just do a quick fire Nuvula, absolutely no reason. Risley has, on Xianyun's release, you could have made a case, maybe. But as of right now, Risley has way too many good teams that it's not worth using this. With Navia, I really like her plunge teams. Her plunge teams have also gotten a buff with Yelan, and even if you aren't getting the res shred, running something like her plunge teams, they feel the most intuitive to play out of all the geo carries, because you just do a few plunges on her, then use her skill, and then go back to doing plunges. In practice though, any of her Bennett teams, whether using Furina or Movuika, should just be better. But at the same time, fleshes out her team options, which I think is valuable, especially since it's between using Xianyun or using Bennett, and you have a team as good as her Bennett teams that don't use Bennett. So I think her plunge teams are nice, even if they aren't her best teams. With Gaming, I'm actually not going to put him in must-pull because Gaming doesn't need Xianyun to enable his plunges, and there are a lot of good Gaming options. Even Eonson, who's about to come out, can potentially even be better than Xianyun, at least for a C0 Xianyun. So unless you're going to C2, Xianyun is still one of the best supports for Gaming, but not necessary for him to function. And the gap between Xianyun teams and non-Xianyun teams aren't that big. You have options like, again, Eonson or Shilonen, or even using double Hydra stuff, or even Sucrose. Sucrose is also really good. So yeah, Gaming has quite a few options that don't need Xianyun. No reason, no reason, no reason. I've said it 1,000 times with the other aggravate carries. No reason, no reason, no reason, no reason, no reason. Wow, Natlan was not nice to Xianyun at all. The last two characters, starting with Shilonen, if you want to play her DPS teams, Xianyun is just the best way to do that. You just run her with Furina, Xianyun, and then I think Keqing was the best in slot, so that's the team you'd play. There are some I guess if you want to do like 3 geo stuff, that could work too. High priority, she can stay on high priority, I guess. Now with Varesa, her best team, okay, so she's definitely not going to be in this tier. Xianyun's not close to a must pull. I don't even know if I'd put Xianyun in high priority, because there's such a distinct gap between her Chevreuse teams and her non-Chevreuse teams. Well, I guess if you're desyncing, the gap isn't that big, but I've seen a lot of people say they just don't want to play desync rotations. I guess the saving grace would be if you want to round out your options more, then you could go for Varesa, you could go for Xianyun. But there isn't like that much of a reason to go for Xianyun purely for Varesa. She's basically just rounding out options in case like your Bennett, Movuika, or Xiangling is being used on the other half, so she can go at mid priority. She doesn't really enable the best teams, she's just to flesh out your account more. So here is what the tier list looks like. I think I did a pretty good job. Overall, unless you fall into like the top 2 categories, there isn't that much of a reason usually for you to get Xianyun. She does happen to enable some really good teams like Gaming, Diluc, and some Varesa stuff, which is nice. But in terms of overall value, I do think you can get by fine without her, unless you are in the top tiers. But yeah, I can't wait for this tier list to get shared around and people not understanding that. Wait, you can on-field Lisa? Hold on, why is Lynette on the list? Lynette is so bad. It's not like people who play Lynette or like Lynette would want to know any of this information. But yeah, yap session done. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Xianyun, as I'd love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Also, if you do think any of the things I put in the tier list is wrong, then go ahead and comment that down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.